Have you ever sat down, looked at your life, and thought, there's more in me than what I'm living right now, but you just can't really see the path? You see, most people drift. They wait for clarity. They tell themselves stories like, it'll get better eventually, or someday I'll take that risk. But the truth is, your brain was literally designed to keep you exactly where you are, comfortable, small, and safe. And that's why your dreams feel out of reach. That's why your best ideas die before they ever get a chance. But today we have someone on One Audacious Move that could quite literally draw out a different plan for your future. Patti Dobrowlski is someone who has figured out how to hack that system. She's a globally known speaker, the creator of Draw Your Future, an author, a person who has frequented numerous TED Talks, and she's worked with everyone from the Dalai Lama to Amazon execs, all teaching people one thing. If you can see it, you can change it. This conversation between Patti and I is not just another self-help talk. We're going to get into the science of why most people stay stuck, how drawing your future actually rewires your brain, and the practical step-by-step way to start pulling your future closer today. So whether you're feeling totally stuck or you're already on your way, but you want to close that gap faster, this episode will change the way you think about your life's trajectory. So grab a pen, because by the end of this, you might just start drawing out your own reality. I'm Cody Stanton-Giles with the One Audacious Move podcast. Let's dive in with Patti. Patti, honored.
Cody.
Honored
to
have you on.
Me too. Fantastic.
Walking down the street, just to bring the viewer into this, walking down the street yesterday in Manzanita, Oregon, and I see you with this big, I don't even, what would you call that? Just like a big piece of paper setup?
Yep, that's right. I got a piece of paper on a piece of foam core, and I'm drawing people's future.
You are, and I saw current reality, and then what was the future reality?
Yep, or desired new reality.
Desired new reality, and there was a certain word that stuck out to me, and it was bold moves.
Yeah, 3 bold steps in the center of it.
Yeah, and we'll be getting into that. But I saw that, and of course that piqued my interest, and grabbed a card while you were talking to somebody and looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to walk back down there and see if she would come on the podcast. And so just seriously, thank you so much.
Oh, I'm honored to be here.
Yeah.
And so glad that we could have the time to do it.
I know.
It's fantastic.
I know, just last minute. So actually my wife, she encouraged me. I was like, I should have asked her back then when we walked by the first time, if she would come on the podcast. She's like, well, you could go back, just one audacious move.
Exactly.
You're right. I'm going to go back and ask her.
Good job.
Good job, Lisa. But I guess, I wanted to start with asking you, you're a keynote speaker, you're an author, you are constantly doing this stuff. This is your job, right?
Yeah.
This is what you do.
That's right.
Why do you do this?
Well, I was stuck in my own life. I was an actor. I'd had a really successful career, and I had kind of an artistic break. And I didn't know what I was going to do after that. Like, who was it going to be? And so my friend Phil, at the time, we were kind of playing around with, how do you actually step into the future that you want to create for yourself? And he and I created, I thought, I'm just going to draw this out. I'd seen an illustrator in a meeting, and I thought, I'm just going to just do this process on myself. Where am I? Where do I want to be? And what do I need to do to close the gap between those two? And so I put that on paper. And right away, all the things started to happen that I put on the future state side, the things that were important to me, like being a speaker, the things that were a way to get a new career. And so once I realized that something happened, I rolled back and thought about when I was an actor, how did I end up on Broadway? And I realized I had drawn a picture of it. I had held a picture in my mind. And so that was the powerful thing. And I thought, oh, if this is possible for me, could I do it with business? Could I do it with people? How could I make this, my thing in the world? And so I just started to experiment and do it. And honestly, I ended up in Denver, Colorado, and started a business with Janine Underhill. And it just took off.
That's amazing. I love hearing a little bit of a glimpse into your story, because you probably felt like those people back then that just didn't have what it takes. You see everybody else out there succeeding, doing what they're wanting to do. But then all of a sudden it happens for you. And then another piece that I like, and I actually noticed this as I was doing some research on you, while drawing can seem deeply artistic, and it is, don't get me wrong, there's this side of it too with what you're doing with your work, that is a deeply logical thing too. Like you just said, you were kind of working your way back to what was the linchpin and kind of that transition for you. Last night, my wife and I, we went out to Elk Flat Cliffs right out here, and our date night mission was we were going to try an art form that we haven't really tried before. And so watercolor was mine. I was like, this is going to be a lot harder for you to do than me, because I don't do as much with like hands-on drawing, anything like that. She tried pointillism. She hasn't done that before, but I tried watercolor. And it was really cool, actually, after meeting you. This was just coincidence. Like, I haven't picked up my hand to draw anything in forever. But how good it felt. And one of your TEDx talks, I saw you talked about the release of serotonin.
Yeah.
That happens whenever you draw. So drawing is something that you're very passionate about.
Well, I am now, but I wasn't an illustrator. I'd never even drawn a picture when I saw that guy draw in that meeting. And I thought, oh, I can do this. I don't know what it was. And so I just realized that whenever I drew something, I felt connected to whatever the thing was. Even if the drawing looked bad, I was like, if I can get my critic out of the way, then I'm going to have an amazing experience. And so then, people do vision boarding all the time. And I had done a vision board and seen it happen. But when I drew something of my vision, something else happened, which was like it landed inside of me in a way that I hadn't experienced before. I felt completely connected to that thing. I thought, wow, this is it. This is who I am. And, it's interesting because I've been experimenting with AI to create social media posts, right? Because it's very easy. And, if you switch it and you have AI ask you questions, then you learn quite a bit about what is already out there. And in that experience, it started to feed back to me the pieces that were most important about what I do. And one of them being that drawing connects you to your essence, who you are. Because we experience the world through our imagination, right? We imagine things happening, and then they come to be if we start to even point our attention that way. And so I just am fascinated by the neuroscience behind it and the magic of using a drawing to create change. It's just powerful.
I love... we imagine, that's a really cool way of saying kind of what we do in the day-to-day subconsciously all the time. I imagine myself being on time, going somewhere. And so therefore I get in the car and do this thing. I take this action in order to make that happen. And so we're imagining, I want to go on a run with a friend later today. Well, I have to make sure that I'm done with this podcast in time and get cleaned up and get some food in me. So I'm like imagining something in the future.
Right.
And then I have to take action between now and then that future state.
That's right. And Hal Hirschfield from UCLA, he wrote his whole study is about future you. And if you actually attach yourself to a future state that you want to experience by imagining it like you're talking about, and then tracking it back, you'll make better decisions in the here and now. So like exactly what you're saying, that you will decide what you need to do. You'll map that to that plan. And I think people don't realize that, attaching yourself to a future self, a future you that you imagine yourself being, we think, oh, well, that seems out there. But that is actually how we create the future for ourselves.
I am really excited. I know we have a limited amount of time here, and just kind of going back to something that I said a minute ago, I love that there's kind of this logical approach to things, that while it's very illustrative what you're doing, there's a logical approach to it. And that speaks to me because before I did videography and all of that and podcasting now, I was an engineer. I went to school for engineering, and they said the baseline thing you were doing as an engineer was problem solving. That's what you were doing. And so when I got into videography, it was an equation to figure out the solution of making something look good on camera. And so I had to figure that out. And so even with this kind of stuff in the whatever you want to call it, self-help world, or envisioning a future version of yourself, it can be broken down into these logical steps of things that you have to do.
Yeah.
A lot of people, though, I feel like they struggle with even, and this is probably something you deal with a lot in your field, is people struggle with even beginning to envision what that future reality might be. Do you feel like you see that a lot?
Oh, yeah. I think it depends on where you come from, too, and your capacity to imagine a future. But, if you're in an environment where it's really hard to imagine anything and you're just imagining you're going to have something to eat and will there be food somewhere, then it's harder for you to imagine a future that you have not seen someone experience. And that's part of it. The second piece is I think that you're limited by what you believe about yourself. And so if you believe and you grow up in a family that says, I want your dreams to be more like us, kid, that is really how you can grow up. But, in my case, I grew up in a family where my dad was an engineer, a civil engineer, and he got glass ceilinged in his job in his 50s. And they said, Joe, you can stay in your job and we'll continue to pay you, but you're not going to get a raise and you're not going to get any more experiences outside of this office that you're working in. My dad was like, I'm not doing that. He quit. He just walked out. And then he started his own consulting business. And my sister, my brother, and we all have had this kind of a mindset that you can shift in the middle of your career to something else. But if we had not seen that, perhaps that we'd be more locked into that you have to have a 9-to-5 job. You shouldn't take any risks. But your whole podcast is about people taking these bold steps and being audacious in what you're doing so that you're not just taking a step, but you're stretching yourself into the area where you don't feel comfortable. And that is the power of, the universe, really, is that you have to believe that you can do it. That's one. But then you have to roll up your sleeves and stay up to 1 a.m. to get it to happen, right? And those things are powerful. Imagine it and then believe that you can do it and then take action.
Yeah. I was talking about this a few podcast episodes ago that I used to be in the church sphere, going to church. And one of the things that was hard for me when I would go to church is people would say, have faith. And then the question I would always have is like, well, how? For love your neighbor as yourself, to forgive them and forget, kind of a thing. And it was always hard for me, these big principles of trust and faith, and action within that religious sphere. It was hard for me to figure out how. My question was always how. And so for the viewer out there that might be like, yeah, like it sounds really nice. Like I really identify with this person that you're talking about that has not seen, I forget exactly how you put it, but hasn't lived in a world where they've seen either in their parents or in their own life the effect that everything's going to be okay, that the world's not going to crumble, the sky's not going to fall if you take this step. What would you say to that person as a practical how, if you could give like one tidbit or any kind of advice into, how do I get myself to actually step out there and be bold?
Well, one thing is just to realize that you are a spark in the universe, and you're here with a purpose that is unique to you. There's nobody out there that's like you at all. You're unique, and that's how you're created in the world. And the second thing is that the ability to allow things to occur in your house, meaning your life, your house, your world, without worrying about how you're going to get there. Because there's a plan for everybody, and your job is to just pay attention to the signals that the universe is giving you. So, and to overcome the kinds of fear that you have, because the difference between fear, the flip side of that coin is love. And we are all created and really, as someone said, that love is the true reality. And so if you can remember that, no matter how hard things are, that it's happening for you, not to you. You're not a victim of it. It's happening for you. So the mystery unravels when you set a course for some path, and then you take the steps to follow through on it. But those doors open. They'll open for you if you have a true desire. And I ask both inwardly, right? At night, before I fall asleep, I say, take me into an experience where I will grow and change so that I can step into the future that I envision in my daily life. So, to me, in my spiritual beliefs now, because I came from a Christian faith, and then at a certain point, I had these experiences that they couldn't explain. And I thought, well, I want to have a direct experience in my inner world so that I understand for myself what is God and why am I here. And so I began to make that part of it. So to me, everything that happens out here, your ability to create a podcast or anyone's ability to create reality, starts first in your imagination, because that's your God-given tool to help you get in and out of any kind of conundrum that you get into. Like, we get into these experiences so we can have experience. And once you realize that, you're like, okay, without judgment, this is happening. And so I'm going to take the high road and try to make this into something magnificent.
Wow. I think that the underlying thing about this podcast is it does go back to, sure, it's talking about one audacious move, and a lot of like the spotlight can be on like this move, but really what we're getting at here is that spark, is that purpose, the why behind it. And I love that you brought that up, because I believe that's so important in all of the talks of this. Like, yeah, well, we're talking about taking audacious moves and being bold and building current reality or a new reality, the future reality, but why? Why should we do that,
Yeah.
Something else that you said right then that I love too, it kind of harkens back to a podcast I was listening to with the writer of Eat, Pray, Love. And she was saying that
sure. Liz Gilbert.
Yes, I always forget her name for some reason. But she said that in our modern society, we almost like fetishize, or I forget how you say that whole word. It's kind of like a mouthful. The word passion.
Yeah.
That, we look at the word passion as kind of the apex of what we should be pursuing in life. And by doing that, it's kind of made the reality of what it looks like to pursue your passion look like this beautiful rainbow-filled road.
Right. Instead of the rugged road that it actually is.
The experience, like you were talking about.
Right.
An experience isn't going to just be all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
They're great stories. They're not all sunshine and rainbows. And so I think that's something that you said that's really important to note is a lot of people, when they finally, let's say they think of their future reality and they're like, I'm going to go for it. And then they hit the roadblock. Or they hit the thing that stresses them out financially or relationally, emotionally, maybe about where they're living or something.
Right.
Then it's almost like a sign to them because, passion is supposed to be this perfect road. Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to do this.
And then I think this is so common, Cody. This is really what people experience. And then they question their dream. And that is why I have people draw a picture of it, because the picture, when you look at it, it reminds you of what you're dreaming about and why you're doing that. And it will actually reboot that serotonin in your system. So you'll feel the same way, and you'll be like, okay, this is my dream. And, really, literally, in one of my TED Talks, I tell the story of Mike Porley, who is a filmmaker, and how he got stuck. And he actually texted me right before I was going on stage. And I read the text to the audience so they could see this is what happens. We run out of money. Somebody tells us our idea is stupid because we shared with somebody who really couldn't dream that big. All these things are going to come up. And you have to just go back to the picture. Go back to what you remember about why you're doing it and find a way through it, because it's just a test in your ability to stay true to yourself. If everything was easy, we'd all have these magnificent houses and, we'd all be whatever, doing all of these fantasies right away, right? And you'd see everybody doing it. But part of the reason we don't is because we're here for experience. We're not here to have necessarily a magnificent experience all the time. Our goal is to hone ourselves, right, in a lifetime where we get to rub on those hard parts of ourselves so that coal turns to diamond. And that every experience you're in, if you can remember that, yeah, I'm a piece of coal here, and we're working on the diamond part, right? Ooh, that helps.
I love that. I love that analogy, that we're, that we are coal being refined into diamonds, but that we are here for experience of people were just able to maybe take that away and think about that one sentence leaving this. We've kind of jumped around. We talked about this idea of drawing. We talked about what you do a little bit, but maybe you probably do this a lot, but maybe for the person that's listening that doesn't know exactly this, and there's probably lots of different programs and ideas that you teach, but that current reality, future reality, bold moves, can you just kind of lay that out, that would look like, so somebody could potentially draw, because you want them to draw out that whole thing, right? Like draw their current reality.
Yeah, it's better if you draw it. If you draw the picture, it's much more powerful. I can draw, and I've drawn for everybody from the Dalai Lama to heads of big companies. And what I know to be true is that if you draw the picture, even if you can't draw, it's way more powerful because it sticks. Okay. So there's a couple of things. One is one of the people that I discovered in this course was the Dobrowlski Foundation, and they have a tool called the Agilities. And so if you don't know what you're good at, you don't know what you're passionate about or what you like to do, and you want to get clear on what those agilities are that are yours, you can go to this website, agilities.org, and take the assessment there. And I also, on that same website, have a video of me doing the whole process. So if you're an educator listening, or you want to do it with your family or yourself, you can watch me and do the process with me right there. But the process is that you get a blank piece of paper and you turn it, horizontal. And in the center of it at the top, draw a little cloud and put your name in it, or your business name. And then on the left side of the picture, write current state. And on the right side, just put future state or desired new reality. And in the center, draw 3 arrows and put bold steps. And then you simply ask yourself first, what's going well in your world? And you capture in words and pictures on the left side of that picture what I am experiencing right now, what's happening for me. I got a great family, or I feel like I understand what I'm going to do with my career, or I got good grades, or whatever it is, at whatever stage you're at. And I have you do the good stuff first, because most of us will go right to the bad stuff, right?
Right.
So you want to capture the good stuff. And if you're analytical, you want to scatter it around the page, because it breaks up what your brain naturally does. We're trying to break it up so that it makes room for the possibility of a bright future, right? So you capture all the good things, and then you capture what's challenging. Still on the left side, capture what's challenging, money, or, you feel like you might have mental health stuff happening, or you're just trying to make change, or you haven't found the partner that you want to be with. Put that stuff there. And then get up, walk around, take a drink of water, do some push-ups or jumping jacks, something to change your consciousness a little, because what happens with your brain is, even though some of that stuff looks good, it's only going to focus on the bad stuff if you don't switch your brain. Switch it up, and then go to the right side of your picture and imagine that it's 1 year from today in the best possible scenario. And on that right side, capture in words and pictures first what it feels like to be you a year from now. Are you confident? Are you energized? Are you whatever it is that are you feeling abundant, right? And then add specifics like maybe you got an award, maybe you started your new business, maybe you wrote that book, maybe your podcast took off, right? And so capture all of that into the picture and then just look at both sides of the picture. Look at the left, look at the right, and close your eyes for a second. Because closing your eyes takes out all the stimulation in the room and it puts you in touch with your creative genius, which is really the engine for you through your imagination. You know, people think creative genius, so that's like Einstein or Steve Jobs or whoever created these great big things. No, creative genius is your capacity to make change through your imagination. So you can access that and ask it, what are the 3 boldest things I can do to get from here to there? And then write them down in those bridges. And then now you've got a plan, really. And that is what the bold steps is for. It's to give the amygdala, the part of you that is totally freaked out that you're trying to change things, you give it a plan, something to hold on to. And usually those bold steps, one's bold, one's tactical, and one is often a mindset shift. Like, I'm going to go from living in fear to living in possibility, or I'm going to, stop talking badly about myself. I'm going to project positivity in all that I do. And then those 3 bold steps, you can break them down into smaller actions. And those actions are what you do. So the bold step should be big enough and kind of scary enough that you have to take small actions to achieve it. And then you put that picture somewhere you can see it every day. And you double click on stuff on the right-hand side that you really want to make happen, and you daydream it, ask to dream about it, get insight about it. And then you just become the detective in your life to see who's coming and what's going to change. And then you take every opportunity to make it so.
Amazing. I'm also probably going to pop up during you talking about that, like a picture of you drawing that or like a video as you walk through it. Because
for sure.
The way you draw too, not having that background is very inviting and very.
I'm a hack drawer. I'll just draw anything,
Yeah, and this is what you were doing with people out on the street out in Manzanita.
Yeah. I work for big companies. But this year, because of the climate that we're living in, where everything seems like in such upheaval, I've just set up on the street in different cities and invited anybody who walks by to come and let me draw their future, just so, and use it for social media, but also just so that I can go back to what I used to do, which was I performed on the street years ago, fire eating and doing all these things, right? And so I feel like, now I'm a performance illustrator now, in a way, right? And so, and the stories, like I've met, Miss Arizona. I drew the future for a guy who came back and saw me like 3 months later and told me his amazing story. I went down to Nogales. I drew for these kids in the Gear Up program. And let me just say that their right side of their picture was more filled with images than any other group of students I'd ever done. And I was like, yeah, this is how life is, right? And so it's all about that.
It's amazing to see how the clues of life, you talked about being a detective, getting to see, obviously your life is not done. We don't have the whole picture, but we can look back at what's happened. You said you were fire eating on the street, and things like that. But now you're on the street and you're street performing in like a different way. You use these talents, these parts of you, this special part of you. Yeah. Like we talked about before we were recording, the superhero part of you that maybe is normal and easy for you to go out and impact the world in these beautiful ways that you can look back and be like, that's why I feel like a lot of people would have a really hard time just setting up shop in the middle of a street and going and doing something like that. But
well, that's the bold step that you're talking about. You have to really be able to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit, even in a tiny way. And if you're afraid of that, make it a really small step. And then when you take a step, acknowledge it to yourself. Oh, wow, I went out and did that, or I started that, or I posted something, or I, drew a picture, or I took a class. and let yourself feel that, because your brain is trained to protect you, and you have to overcome that. And you have to be able to overcome and calm your brain enough to step out in the universe. That, and this other piece that you're talking about, Cody, is your superpower is really an everyday thing that you do. It is, your superpower is sometimes the thing that your friends might say, oh, you're so good at fill in the blank, right? You're so funny, or you're so, good at creating an environment that feels welcoming, or these are the very small agilities that you have that can become something that you do to serve the world. Your job is to figure out, how can I serve the world better? Because once you align in service to the universe, everything will open for you. When you focus on serving others, it changes everything.
Changing that passion to purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that you do that brings you life goes out into the world and impacts those around you. That's incredibly beautiful. You talked about the mystery as we go through life, that it is really interesting how it is that thing that your friends say, like I think about one of my friends, he's a really good host. He's really good at hosting people and making people feel loved for. I've heard him say sometimes that he doesn't know like what brings him life. And sometimes I'm like, man, this is right in front of you. This is right in front of you what you should be doing more of, because you bring so many people joy when you have events and you have people over and you do these kinds of things. With this approach, let's go back to the street here. Or honestly, what in maybe just as a grand summation of everything that you do, what would you say is the biggest kind of aha moment that people have as you go through this, where you kind of almost see like the eyebrow raise a little bit, where they're like, oh, or they maybe they get an insight into themselves that they haven't seen before. What would you say is that biggest aha thing that people experience?
I think the aha for people is to see their life on a piece of paper in front of them, and to realize that they're valuable enough for that dream. The dream comes to life in front of them when the picture is drawn. And then you realize, oh my God, that's possible. I can do that. It's on a piece of paper now, right? And even in a room full of executives, when they see themselves represented in a picture, in a future vision that they want to create together, it's this huge aha. They just look at each other like, yeah, that's it. And everyone's voice gets represented. That's the beauty of this graphic recording, which I'm doing, is just you want to represent everything that people say, not just what you think you hear, but asking and validating and knowing that, because it's their picture. It's not mine. I'm not creating it for me. I'm creating it for you. And you matter. And that's what people get in that. You matter.
Do you find that people have a hard time with this sometimes? Do you find that is it pretty easy for people to kind of dive in and kind of start laying out their current reality? Let's say whether they're drawing it or you're kind of helping them through it and drawing for them. Do you find that that's hard for people sometimes to do?
For sure it is. I was in Harlem doing it with a bunch of kids, and, as soon as they started to draw their current reality, they started to get agitated and beat each other up in the classroom. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I realized, okay, class 2, I'm going to let them know you're going to feel uncomfortable, because of course you look at that current reality you're living and it brings up all the pain you're in. There's no doubt about it. And so you have to stay calm. And I tell people this is, sometimes it's going to bring stuff up. And I don't even know what it is it's bringing up, right? And that's why we do the brain break in the middle, because otherwise you'll just get stuck in that, which is what happens every single day when you get up. If you go right to your phone and you start looking at the news, forget about it. The world that we live in right now, you got to get up and start with just a little gratitude for the fact that you woke up and that you're breathing, and then go do something, for yourself, to remind yourself. Like even Mel Robbins, she did this thing, and I thought it was so hokey. But I tried it, and it was like, it really worked. Like she said, go and look at yourself in the bathroom mirror and give yourself a high five in the mirror. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. Well, then I started to try it in my audiences. I would say, all right, everybody high five each other. And I would say, give credit to Mel Robbins because she's the one that started doing it. But I mean, really, you want to start your day in the positive frame. So put yourself there, set yourself up for success, and know that everything that comes to you is happening for you to experience and grow. No matter how hard it is, you're going to learn something incredible from it. And the other side is way better than where you are now.
Well said. Thanks for speaking into that. I love how simple, obviously the stuff we're talking about, the way that you've talked about it. I mean, you've gotten into science, you've gotten into spirituality, but the broad nature of what you're talking about makes it very simple in approach. Current reality, future reality, bold moves. And I think that can help a lot of people in the self-help space. And correct me if I'm wrong, would you say that this is in the self-help space? So what you're doing?
I think it is.
Yeah.
No matter whether we're helping in big company like Amazon or someone else,
Right.
We're in the self-help place.
Yeah. I've noticed that, like, if I'm watching a YouTube video from Mel Robbins or Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson or something like that, there's the people that, they'll speak into the story, even on like your, actually, I didn't see the negative side of things on your TED Talk thing, but lots of people being helped from it. There will always be that person that comes along and says, well, easy for you to say.
Exactly.
Easy for you to say, I am working 2 jobs and I have 4 kids. And I would love to
go be an artist somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds really nice to pick up a
dream.
pen and go and do this thing. This is always kind of like the knee-buckling question that I sometimes get whenever I'm talking about the bold moves or I'm talking about going in and creating a life, being the architect of your life. And they're like, well, honestly, like you said at the beginning, I'm just trying to put some food on the table. I'm just trying to pay bills.
That's right.
How do you think that this equation outlook, illustrative journey that you take people on, does it still apply to those people?
I mean, it applies to you even more because you're... if you can get beyond just looking at where you are now and it take even 5 minutes of your day to envision a future outside of what you're currently experiencing and be grateful for whatever you are experiencing, it will shift everything. It'll shift the dynamic of who you are in the world, and you'll come from a place of being open-hearted. And so, most of the people that I was one of those people that didn't have enough, when I was just starting as an actor. I was like, how am I going to do this? I'd be, going to eat at other people's houses, right? And just trying to make that happen. I knew that this was just a temporary thing. Top ramen, 3 days, that was temporary. And so I think for people that are out there thinking, oh, yeah, sounds good for you, white lady, just know that it doesn't matter where you come from. You have had many experiences already, and they shape you. And so choose to focus on the experiences that are going to help shift you, and know that this 2-job thing, you're going to get an opportunity to do something else. So any chance that you can take in the morning before you get up and take care of your kids, before you get up and go to the job to dream your dream. I can't tell you how many Ubers I've sat in or Lyfts and given just talk to people and say, put the dream on the dashboard of your car and then see what happens. Life will help you to get there when your heart is in the right place.
I think that's really good advice to even for the people that have stepped more into a space of taking these risks and taking action toward their future reality. I think about myself and I'm like, I talk myself up about the audacious moves that I've taken in my life. But in reality, there's a lot of current situations that I can either settle into, and my brain will tell me, oh, you know what, it's actually not that bad, like you said in your TEDx talk, like that.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah,
I'm making a little money here.
Yeah,
that boss is not that mean, like that. But no. If you're uncomfortable somewhere, shift it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any kind of, I don't know exactly how to word this, but do you ever think that there's this, because that's uncomfortable, those things, we're actually not okay with them, but for some reason we want to be okay with them in a way. There's like our brain will push us away from.
Exactly. It avoids anything scary because it wants to keep you safe from harm. That's its job, your brain. It doesn't want you to be in danger. Come on, that lion is big, right? And so it will try to put a protective shield around you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting how that works. Our modern society is very modern. The way that we live has escalated to the point in the last 50 years where, it is vastly different the way that our brains have to function compared to the way that they've been trained over millennia, through just instinct and the way that the human mind has been. So we're in this situation where maybe 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, the way that our brain had us think was actually the best way. You would think that.
Yes, it was protective, and it was meant to be for that time. It was perfect for that time. And what's interesting is if you look at how we're adapting now, and you have to adapt very quickly now to stay ahead of the curve. And you also, you want to, one of the things that I've just watched myself, don't trust everything you hear or read. Pay close attention to your own intuitive feeling inside. If you have a gut reaction to something and you think that doesn't sound right, trust that. Trust you. This is a time of discernment more than any time. So you'll find the right things for you, but you get to learn discernment as you go along. And I know I certainly have done things and thought, ooh, that wasn't so good. I could have said that differently or whatever, right? But that's part of it too, is getting to know yourself and then aligning yourself with who you will be and want to be in the future, and then stepping toward it and acknowledging every chance you get.
My friend and I, the friend whose house that we're in right now, we actually host this yearly thing called the Alignment Experience. And we host it a few days after New Year's. And it's basically a call to get out of the, for lack of a better word, the mediocrity of what New Year's resolutions call you to, and take a full weekend to sit and swim in silence and to analyze your life for what it has been, what has led you here through experience, where you are now because of it, and where you can go because of what has built you too, that you're not defined by all of that stuff between. What would be really cool though is me and my friend are really big on goals. It would be really cool to implement, not just writing them down, but drawing them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's something that I need to start doing more and more. My last question, I think, for you as we kind of come to a close here, I know you need to get on the road. You're going out east, right? Way out there. That's a long way from Oregon. And I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but when we think about like the viewer, I'm always kind of just thinking about the person that's listening to this and trying to equate it back to them. How kind of a piece is something that I love to dissect even further, of how do you get yourself to actually do these things? Because, actually, I'm going to ask that in two different. How do you get yourself to actually do these things? But how do you get yourself to keep doing these things too?
Yeah,
we can get super excited.
Yeah, and Pete Cohen and I talk about this quite a bit. He's in the UK and he was a coach there, and so we always are discussing what's motivation? What is the thing? And is motivation is a temporary thing, right? And so I think one of the things that happens is, and I know it happens for me, I'll get from AI, all this stuff that I could possibly do with the business, etc. And then suddenly I'm totally overwhelmed. I'm like, what of these things can I actually do with my time? So the first thing is, every day, set your intent for what you want to experience in that day. Like start your day by setting your intent. Okay, so I'm going to have an incredible experience of a day, and I'm going to meet all the people that I need to, and I'm going to take a few steps towards these things that I want to accomplish. And then I'm very engineering about this whole thing. If I want a goal, I want to definitely build a plan. So I'll build out and map out time in my schedule for these things to happen, even if I've got a full-time job. Even when I'm on the road, I always write in the morning, meditate in the morning, do all the things that keep me in balance, and eat well, as good as I can, and try to get as much sleep. Then I have a checklist. I'm a checklist person. I check off, what did I experience in this day at the end of it? I just reflect before I conk out, who did I meet? What was important about it? And then, I don't waste time and say, oh, dreams are just nothing. I use my nighttime to get stuff done. I'm like, okay, tonight I want to work through this issue that I have with this person. So if you can help me to resolve this in some way, however that works, go for it, right? And so I think, all of us, we want to set a goal and have a plan, and then you have to be flexible because stuff happens and you get derailed, but derailing sometimes is the way, right? So you got to love the process. That's what somebody said in his map yesterday. One of the first, he was like a 16-year-old kid, and he said, I need to love the process of myself getting there because that's key. So make a plan, make it as concrete as you need it to be, activate it, and then keep going back to remind yourself, oh, this is what I'm working on, because life will distract you. And then just every time you accomplish anything, be grateful and acknowledge yourself for taking the risk to do it.
The noise is loud in life. You talked about distraction.
Yeah.
And I think that is, those things seem to, whether it's the noise of our own brain trying to get us to act in a way that we would have 10,000 years ago, or if it's the noise of the busyness of life with all of the little vicissitudes and things that we have to go and do in life.
Yeah.
It can really derail us from that vision where we lay out. And I love the way that you come at it too. And you said you have an engineering mind, but the way that you draw, if anybody looks you up, they're going to see like how fun and artistic and like beautiful the things that you're drawing are too. And so it's not just black and white of, only drawing your stuff. You have checklists, you're writing stuff out too. You're on AI and doing different things. You're harnessing
everything that's possible.
Yeah. And that's because you see that spark in you. That
yes,
and
everybody else who's out in the world, somebody's bringing me something, any kind of information that somebody shares with me. I'm like, oh, what a great idea. I'm going to write that down myself so I can try it. So everybody is a resource for you. Even the people that are negative, they're a resource. Like, I don't know, somebody had a song about, thanks for, leaving me or something like that. And I was like, oh, wow, what a great way to reframe that, right? Mm-hmm. So that you see it as an opportunity for you to be your best self.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think about, well, first off, just once again, thanks for coming on and doing this. It was a bold move for me to step out.
It was
that, you're busy. We're leaving. I got a date night with my wife and I'm trying to enjoy one more night here, but I really think that this would be incredible. And so, just honored that you stopped to do this and just to speak into this whole idea of audacity again. It's that these bold moves over time in your life, there might be a drift of your current reality, maybe slowly toward that future reality. There's going to be, maybe it'll take 20 years.
Exactly.
Maybe it'll take 30 years, 40 years. But a lot of times this is the beautiful thing about audacity to me, is that audacity is almost this key to shrinking that timeline of what would have been, because you decided to act now.
Yeah.
You decided to take that bold move now because eventually, maybe because of a situation, or you finally just got to the place where you were like, okay, well, maybe I'll do this now. You actually took the action 6 months beforehand, and that just got the snowball rolling so much faster. And so at Audacity, the bold move is such a beautiful part of this equation.
Yeah, it's the rubbing on the Aladdin's lamp.
Oh, there we go. Yes, I love that analogy. Well, Patti, thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you,
to
Cody.
Do this.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm honestly, whenever I get back home, especially because I drew yesterday and kind of felt that serotonin boost of just like, wow, this is really fun. I'm excited to go and do this for myself because there's so much in my life that I still want to accomplish and do with the spark that I see in myself. And so,
you're amazing. This has been an amazing experience, and you can't see what the setup is here, but I'm like, oh my God! And you're on vacation doing this. This is incredible. So
the gear happens to follow me around sometimes. So
that's right,
Patti.
Thank you for inviting me. It was really brave of you to come up and ask me, and I'm glad that we got this chance together.